Good morning, everyone. So we're going to go over these problems, and then we're going to kind of have a different day today. So please make sure you're fully engaged and understand what's going on today so you don't miss anything. But let's start off here, and our goal is to basically work backwards. So we want to think, well, whose derivative gave me negative sine of x? And this is really just, at least to start, it's just knowing your derivative facts. I really don't need these boxes, I just put them there. So let's work backwards and see what we have going on. So some of these are just facts, right? Whose derivative gives me negative sine? Well, that's cosine of x, right? The derivative of cosine is negative sine. So there's a process we want to think about here today, and it's actually getting us towards what we're going to call the last big idea of this textbook of calculus. So we're getting near the end. I know it might not seem like that. So what did we do? Well, we've learned first trimester we developed these rules through limits, and we learned that if I have the function, we can take its derivative. But what if I'm giving the other function? So I want to go back. This is called the antiderivative, or the opposite of the derivative. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, at least the start of this unit. Now, there's a process to do this, and I did not show you the process. If you know a little bit about it, it's called the integral. The integral is what's going to undo a derivative, and it's just a special symbol we'll kind of put like this, and then there's going to be a dx over here, and that's this little funky looking s is an integral symbol, and it tells us to take the antiderivative. So I didn't show that yet, and on Wednesday you're going to be asked to watch a video that starts off on that process. So I'm just kind of setting the groundwork for you. Okay, they get a little bit trickier, because this one was just memorizing facts, but what about a power rule? Well, what if I had another example? Let's say that g prime of x was equal to 3x squared, right? And I had to undo that. Well, if we knew the derivative, we always took one away from the exponent. So I would have to add 1. So I'd get a 3 up there. And then we have to understand that that 3 would drop down if I took the derivative. So this 3 right here is in a really good spot. And it's going to go away. It's going to kind of go back into the exponent when we take the antiderivative. So what about if I have x to the 1/2? Well, to get back to where I started, I have to add 1, but I want a creative form of 1 up there. So I'm going to put a 3/2 here. Now, here's the tricky spot. If I said my answer was x to the 3/2, and I took the derivative of it, I would take away 1 here, which is 2 over 2, right? And I would end up with the 1/2. So I have the correct exponent up here. However, if I checked my work, if I took this answer and I took the derivative to get back to here, I'm missing something out front, right? The 3/2 would come down. So I want to think what's going to cancel out a 3/2. And we need to put in a value right out in front that's going to cancel out. So if the 3/2 came down, the only thing that would cancel out the 3/2 would be a 2/3. Let me erase this part. And what I would do then is say, well, if that's my answer, let's check it. If the 3/2 comes down, then 3/2 times 2/3 goes away and turns into 1, which is what I technically have up here. And if I took away 2 over 2 up top, I'm left with a 1/2. So there's my answer. And I got a tricky one. This one always gets kids, because what if you follow the same rule? I had to add 1 here to get it up to Sorry, I gotta mark somebody present. So what if I added 1 like we said you're supposed to? Then I get x to the 0. But x to the 0 is 1, and the derivative of 1 is not x to the negative 1. So this is one of the most famous integral problems or antiderivative problems that we're going to have. And what you have to do is you have to think of this slightly different. Remember how we can write x to the negative 1? So now I'm thinking whose derivative gives me 1 over x? And that's the special rule, the natural log of x. Now, you'll notice I put absolute values around here. The reason why is because we want any value in here has to be positive. And there's a domain issue with that, which we're not going to get into right away. All right. And then the last one, we saved the best for last. This is 3 pieces put together. And notice instead of calling it, H prime or F prime, I said V of t. So what I'm thinking is this is position and this is velocity. So remember, the derivative of position got me to velocity. So if I undo velocity, that will get me back to position. And it's that whole process of taking the derivative and then the new part called the antiderivative. So the first part actually is kind of friendly. E to the x. Well, whose derivative gives me e to the x? It's itself. But then I run into a small problem right here. That x squared on the bottom, I'm going to rewrite it so it just looks different right now. And then I want to add 1 to the top. So if I add 1 to the top, that's going to give me x to the negative 1. Now I got to think the 6 is there. Well, if I took the derivative of this, there would have to be a 6 here. However, if I took the derivative of x to the negative 1, that negative 1 is going to come down and times by 6, and that would make this a negative 6, not a positive. So I'm going to compensate for that. I'm going to make this a minus. Right? If you're not sure, take the derivative of what we just wrote. The negative 1 comes down, negative 1 times 6 is positive 6, and then I would take 1 away up top, which would give me x to the minus 2, which would put the x down here. And then notice this part is the exact same thing as what we had in number 1. So this would be a plus cosine of x. Now, there's one thing that we have to talk about here, because technically, I could say none of these answers are right. Okay? And you might be thinking, why? Well, what if I put a plus 10 right here? That's a different function, right? If I looked at the graph of cosine x plus 10, the plus 10 is a vertical shift up. Or what if I put plus 100? Right? That's a vertical shift up 100 units. Now you'll notice it doesn't matter what number I put right here because the derivative of any constant will always be 0. So we do have to compensate or put in the fact that there could be any type of constant right here. So I want you to put a plus c after each one of your answers. And just so you know, that c stands for a constant. Right? It could be minus pi. It could be plus 700. We don't know. So to make sure that we adjust for our all answers, all possible answers when we go backwards, we're going to put a plus c at the end of every single answer until we get more information to figure out what that c value is. All right? And all that is a vertical shift up. If you think of vertical shifts moves the function up and down without changing the slopes, which we know slopes are derivatives. So I can add a plus c, and that does not affect the slopes of the graph. All right, this was just a 4-question introduction to how do I go backwards, right? We knew how to go forward with derivatives, but now going backwards, we're finding what's called the antiderivative. We're given the antiderivative, and we have to find the original function. Well, that process of going backwards is going to be called integration. And that's what I want to just quickly introduce here before we talk about what we're going to do today. Here are the three big ideas of calculus. We've already done limits. We didn't spend as much time in limits. That was chapter 1 and chapter 2. But limits is it's the foundation of calculus. That's what allowed us to understand the idea of the derivative. That's the definition of the derivative is limited base. And then once we got into derivatives, we learned all of the rules for derivatives, all their properties. We learned the applications of it. How do I figure out if a function is increasing or decreasing? Where's maxes, mins? Where's it concave up, concave down? We could analyze a function based off its derivative or second derivative, and we could gain some pretty valuable knowledge. So we've already done those, and look at what's left. Something called integration or integrals. That is basically what we just did in our warm-up. That's what we're doing moving forward. We're going to basically be doing the reverse of the derivatives. Now we're still going to have to apply it, and we're still going to make conclusions based off of those conclusions. So you really have to be in tune with what we're doing. And then we have something called the fundamental theorem of calculus, which it sounds scary, but I'll tell you, you already did part of it in today's warm-up. So it's just the official theorem that allows us to undo derivatives and get back to the original function. All right, so I just want to paint that picture for you. If you want to think of it, we're roughly well over 2/3 of the way through the year. We spend a lot of time with derivatives, and then we have chapter or unit 6, unit 7, and unit 8. We've got 3 more units left of calculus. So with that being said, I want a couple reminders here for you. I'm going to show you this letter that Mr. Sefong sent out. Payment for the AP exam is due on January 31st. We're going to have a quick little talk about that. But you should have got this letter in an email, and I'm not going to read it all the way, but it basically says, parents and students, your child is enrolled in an AP course. You have to make an online payment system is available. Use this link here to go to the AP exam payments. You need to create an account if you haven't done so. It's $50 for each exam or $10 if the student is approved for the free and reduced lunch program. So you probably know if you're on that, that's $10 per exam. If not, you're paying $50. If you're already approved for the program, and the online payment system will adjust for that price. If you think you're on it and it's not, then you can contact Mr. Sefong or Ms. Trevette, or you can even let me know and I'll send the message along to them so you can get the correct payment on there. But the deadline for making the payment is January 31st. If you have any specific questions, you can reach out to me, or here's the information for the College Board program. You can click on that. Now, your parents should receive this, and I believe you should have as well. I also have a more condensed link I want to show you. This was what Mr. Sefong sent out as well. So step 1 for the payment is basically here's the link, and then you create the account, deadline, and then once you did sign up, then step 2 is to watch your email for exam information. And a lot of times that's not going to come out until April or May. Hopefully they give you some, and I'm not sure, this is kind of a new system for all of us. So I'm not sure that if once you sign up, I'm assuming you'll get an email just confirming that you're signed up, and then you'll watch your emails as we get closer to the exam date. As of right now, I believe, I gotta double check, but it's like the first Tuesday in May is the projected date. That could change. We're not positive. They're kind of waiting just to see where the pandemic places most of the people who are going to be taking it. And then they're going to make their decision. But I'm sure we'll find out within the next month or so. Okay, now there's one last thing I want to tell you about the AP exam and signing up and paying for it. And that is if you pay the $50 or $10 and you sign up for it, and then you decide not to take it this year only, they will reimburse you that full amount. So as long as you don't open up a link from them saying, take the test, start this test now, assuming it's online, um, as long as you don't open that email or start taking the test, you will get your money refunded, which is really nice because we don't all know where we're going to be at in the next 3 4 months. And maybe hard times fell upon you and you aren't ready for the AP test. So that way you get that money refunded. But my advice for you is unless you know for sure with 100% certainty you're not going to take it, which if that's the case, please let me know. I need to tell Miss Trevette and Mr. Stefan who's going to be taking the test and who's not. And if you know that you are 100% not going to take that, please send me a private chat or an email at some point just saying, I'm not going to take it. And then we'll make sure that that exam isn't ordered for you. If you already paid, then you'd get your money refunded. But if you're on the bubble, my advice would be to pay for it and then wait and see because we're going to do a lot of reviewing third trimester. Almost most of third trimester is going to be reviewing for the AP test. And we're going to do some practice tests and all that. So you'll get a feel for it. And if you come to the point where it's the day to take it and you don't take it, you'll be refunded. Okay? But just make sure you get your payment in before the 31st. All right. Any questions on that or the AP test in general? You can unmute yourself and just ask it. It's probably easier. Okay. If there is in the chat, feel free to throw it in the chat, and I'll read that and I'll come back to it. So what are we doing today? Well, I sent an email, a Schoology message yesterday morning, early, right before lunch, I believe, about the quiz from last week. It was officially due on Sunday at 9 p.m. And at that point, 9 students had taken it. I had set aside some time on Monday morning to grade that, and I was a little disappointed because I'm trying to manage my time to get everything organized, and I graded 9 quizzes, and now I have to find more time this week, which is already a busy week with conferences and whatnot, to grade the rest of those. So I am throwing a little bit of a guilt trip on you guys. I was really hoping we would get almost everybody to take that 6-question quiz. It probably took a half hour, and now I have to go back and find new time in this week with conferences coming up for you to grade those. Now, 3 of you did respond, so I actually have 12 total quizzes that have been completed. But that means well over half of us did not even open it yet or didn't even look at it. And that's what we're going to have to do today. So what we're going to do now is let's read this full agenda and then we'll have you guys decide on what you need to do. So we're going to open last week's quiz on AP Classroom. So you got to log into AP Classroom. You're going to take the quiz if you haven't already. It's due at the end of the hour. You're going to show all work on a separate sheet of paper, and then you're going to submit that work to Schoology. Now, we do know that 2 of the questions require you to submit an image within that question. Those are the free response questions. And then the submit to Schoology work, that's like our backup. In case I can't see something, I know it's there on Schoology. But you get 8 points for just submitting your work. So you want to make sure you do that. So if you didn't take the quiz, that's what you're going to be doing today. If you did take the quiz, I'd like you to work on any corrections. You can get 100% back on this quiz if you correct anything you got wrong. And those of you, the 9 people that originally took it, I graded yours and I put comments on what you might need to do to fix it. So you can go back and look at those comments. And then if you do, you can correct them and send it send me an email. We don't have a spot in Schoology to submit corrections, so just send me an email when that's done, and I'll update your grade. Um, and actually, you know what? I didn't even put the grade in Schoology yet because I got to look at the work. But if you're done with all that, some of us still need to work on the Chapter 5 test corrections. You could get up to 75% back for that Unit 5 test that we took right before winter break. Email those when you're done, and I'll get to those before Wednesday or on Wednesday for sure. We have conferences on Thursday from 4 to 7, and your parents are going to be invited to attend a Zoom to meet with their teachers. So if your parents are going to attend and you want to make sure your grade is up and as, as good as it can be, you need to get this stuff in before Wednesday so I have time to grade it. And the last thing is if you have any missing homework, which would be marked with an M in our campus gradebook, then that's what you're going to be working on. So think of today as a work day. Some of you have to take the quiz, and that's what I'd like you to do right now. Others are going to work on quiz corrections, test corrections, or missing homework. If you got 100% on everything, or you can't do the test corrections, but you're done with quiz corrections, then you've earned the right to kind of have a relaxing morning. Okay, so that's all I got. I'm going to be on Zoom if you have any questions, so you guys can hang out. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to check. I can see who logs in, and that's one of the ways I'm going to do attendance today. Is if you did not take the quiz, I'm going to check to see that you are starting it and you completed it. And if you don't start it today, then you don't get attendance for today. All right. So that's what we got. You are free to leave Zoom if you understand what's going on.